This episode of the Cost of Living Abroad pod is brought to you by SafetyWing Nomad Insurance. This week I sat down with Josh from Josh on the Move to talk about why so many expats are falling out of love with Thailand. Are we actually seeing a tourism bubble, a full-on collapse? We break down the rising costs in Thailand, compare it to Vietnam, and dig into what's really going on in the news about Thailand. Stick around to the end. Josh reveals how he grew his YouTube channel from under 1,000 subscribers to over 16,000 in just 1 year. Welcome to Cost of Living Abroad. This week we are talking to Josh on the Move. I met him through his videos on YouTube. He came through Da Nang. He's got some huge videos that he put together in Thailand, and he's also traveled all over Australia and basically all over the world. So I'm super excited to talk to you today, man. Do you want to just, say hello, give an introduction to the audience?
It's good chatting with you too. I appreciate you having me on. And a little bit about me. I'll try to keep it short and sweet. I'm a digital nomad. I'm from the UK. I'm 31 years old. I've been working as a digital nomad, moving around mainly Southeast Asia over the past 3, 4, 5 years. And more recently, in the last few years, that time has gone from spending maybe 3 months outside of the UK to 6 months to 8 months to now. I just tend to go back a few months each year to visit family, see friends, mainly based out of Thailand, but have traveled numerous times to Vietnam, up and down the country twice in both directions. Spent time there living as a digital nomad. Traveled most parts of Australia. I have family over there, so I've been fortunate enough to have free accommodation, which has meant I've always had a base there to travel from. And I've been as far as New Zealand, which is pretty much as far as you can get from the UK. I work in the health and fitness industry. I help people predominantly with movement-based solutions, and I've been doing that for 10 years. And more recently, the last few years, I went fully in online in that space, and I do some video editing and YouTube as well. From a place.
Where are you based? You spend your time in Bangkok or in the islands or what?
No, actually. So Bangkok's probably my least favorite. Not that I don't like it. Not that I don't like Bangkok, but it's probably my least favorite place to spend substantial amount of time, a weekend or whatever. It's cool. Mainly, I like to base myself like where I am now in Phuket, or I also like Koh Samui. They tend to be the 3 places I spend most of my time.
I haven't been to Koh Samui since 2011. Which sounds stupid. It makes me sound so old. But it was really interesting. I felt like Samui was a pretty developed place like 15 years ago. But it sounds like it's insanely well developed, like almost like as much as Phuket.
It is, but it seems to be a little bit more condensed there. Like Phuket is a bit more spread out. You can go to multiple parts of the island and it feel pretty developed most places now. There's a few spots that it isn't. Whereas Samui seems to be that northeast kind of area like Chaweng, and down in the south like Lamai, and a little bit up into Fisherman's Village. But then you get out of that and the beaches are much quieter, the areas are much quieter, the roads are a little bit quieter as well. And it's a bit smaller. It's still very developed, it's very touristy, but it isn't quite like Phuket yet, I wouldn't say.
What's the cost difference between back home in Redden versus Phuket for your standard breakfast, lunch, and dinner? Like what you spend on feeding yourself in a day?
I would actually say that this might surprise some that it's comparable, because where I'm at, I don't have a full kitchen set up, and I'm quite lazy in that sense. I would rather go out and get some food, put down my laptop, maybe spend a bit more than what I would if I was getting some food and cooking it myself, and just be out and be able to experience that. Because back home I wouldn't be eating out all the time. I'd be buying it, I'd be cooking it at home. I would have more means of making food cheaper. However, considering I spend nearly the same amount here as I do back home, yet back home I would be eating in 90%, whereas here I'm eating out 90%. I think that shows the big difference there in cost.
So what's the cost? How much do you spend? Like in pounds are about three pounds, about $4 I think right now.
So I would be spending around here somewhere between 15 and 20 English pounds a day. So what we're looking at, maybe like late 20s to early $30.
Okay, so that's pretty high. That's like, what is it, $800, $900 a month, something like that.
Yeah, most people get surprised by my food bill. In fact, on the video I'd done in Da Nang of my cost of living there, the amount of comments I had from people saying, "Whoa, that's way too expensive. Like you're getting ripped off." So no, it's not. It's not too expensive. It's not a rip off because I'm always aware that I spend a disproportionate amount of my expenses on food each month. I like to eat well. I eat a lot of meat. I eat a lot of fresh fruit, veg. I eat quite a lot of food throughout the day. And for me, that's just an expense that no matter where I am on the planet, it will always be a higher expense. And I'm quite content with that. I cut back in other ways.
I've talked to other people, less digital nomad types actually. It's usually been more a couple of people who have families who have kids who are like, especially things like quality meat, free range, organic fruits. They're just like, that's a high priority in their life. And as a result, it's a high priority in their budget. And I think that that's something maybe that's a bit of a misconception too, right? Like one of the things you can do here is, you know exactly what you're doing is that you don't necessarily have to save money, but through geo arbitrage, the same amount of money buys you an exceptionally higher quality of life.
I've got friends that are doing the same or living out this neck of the woods, and they aren't holding back, but they are just viewing it exactly how you just explained. They're spending the same amount of money, but their quality of life is just exceptionally higher.
People who are thinking about this, dreaming about doing what we're doing, right? And I think it's one of the things I hope I do when we have these conversations is just like show people that anyone can do this and that there's no real rule book, right? Like, of course people can help you and guide you and tell you their own experience, but it's like, there's no right way to like leave the UK and live in Thailand, right? There's no like correct way to like leave America and live in Vietnam. I use SafetyWing's Essential Plan every time I travel around Southeast Asia to film this show, and not just for medical stuff. You also get up to $500 per luggage item lost, $3,000 if your checked luggage disappears, $5,000 for trip interruptions. I mean, this stuff can come in super handy if my camera equipment or recording gear goes missing, or if I get stuck and have to reschedule an episode. And if there's travel delays, they do cover you for up to $100 a day in your hotel. And this is on top of all the medical insurance. If it sounds good to you, use this QR code over my shoulder to sign up now, or check the link pinned in the comments and at the top of the descriptions for this episode. Now let's get back.
I quite often will get a question like from, it actually tends to be from like many people in the fitness industry because they've seen what I've done and they maybe want the same at some point. And they say, how many clients did you have when you first done it? How much money did you have saved? How much this? But the reality is again, what you just said is it's different for everyone. You have a different risk tolerance. You have a different outlook on what you need to have saved in the bank to feel happy. Is it £1,000? Is it £100,000? Is it that you need to be spending out $2,000 on your accommodation each month? Is it that you're going to be spending $500 on your accommodation each month? I think the main thing is that you feel comfortable and that you want to do it. And if you do, in my opinion, anyone can do it and you can make it happen.
Yeah, I feel strongly about that. I really feel that way, not just about enjoying yourself and living in Southeast Asia, but about the earning online component. I think that a lot of people are actually more afraid of that part, right? Like more afraid to leave a traditional job, the safety of the office, the safety of an employer back home, maybe a 4K savings plan or a health insurance plan. So, well, let's get into that aspect then. What about your monthly expenses for like running your whole online digital nomad operation, like everything from subscriptions to Wi-Fi to, phone, SIM cards, etc. And then also maybe any other sort of setup like gear costs, stuff like that.
Yeah, so in terms of my whole setup with business, it's around like 200 to 250 US dollars a month. And that will be things like coaching software that I use to host my training programs and where I can contact people and all of that. I Also may have some subscriptions to things like Canva or Loom, where I can do voice recordings and share my screen and do presentations for clients or give them valuable feedback on certain things within that. I then have my editing software that I use, and at the minute it's just CapCut. Again, this is one thing that a lot of people overanalyze and obsess about, is like, which editing software do I need, which this, which that. But not to go off on too much of a tangent there, but if budget is your main priority, just look for the cheapest or free ones that you can use and just use that.
Riverside now to do the online podcast and interviews, and it's like the fastest, most efficient, least resistance is what I want, right? I don't want like all the features, the bells and whistles. You just want what's the easiest thing to get my content out, right? To reach your clients or your audience or whatever.
Now I am creating content on YouTube, which isn't my main source of income, but is a source of income. I need to consider things like storage. Like I have a couple of SSD hard drives that I have external to my laptop, and things like that. When they get full, you might need to buy some more space in the cloud, or you might need to buy another hard drive. You might need a small SD card, or something might go wrong with your camera equipment, or you might need a new microphone, stuff like this. But as we touched on, most of the time you can get by with less than what you think you need. The other stuff is nice to have when you have surplus funds to buy it, or when you can justify it after things start making you a certain amount of money.
What about, you said you're primarily in Thailand now, but you definitely more than me. I mean, you were literally on the move. You definitely move around. What do you spend as sort of like a monthly average, or you could also do it as like a yearly total, and we could just divide it on literal, like getting around, transportation, visas, all, that nomadic aspect of it?
Probably more than I wish I would, but that being said, and just me being totally transparent, I tend not to budget specifically for that. And because at the end of the day, the way I look at that is, if I need to go back to the UK right now and there's an emergency for one reason, then I would need to get up and go. I would need to pay whatever price I had to pay for that flight, and I would just have to grin and bear it and do that. What do I budget across the year? I really wouldn't want to be spending much more than like $200 a month on that. Because, let's say if I'm back in the UK for 3 of them months, that's 3 months of zero spending on that. If I'm then in Australia, like I just was for 6 weeks, that's 6 weeks of no spending on that. And all I needed, there was cost for a visa in Australia. There's no cost for a visa in the UK. And as of right now, there's no cost for a visa in Thailand for the amount of time that I actually spend in Thailand. I'm kind of not loopholes. I'm just not so committed to one place where I'm having to spend visa costs. However, if I was to renew in Thailand like I done twice last year, it was around $50 a go, and that was every around 6 weeks.
Yeah, that's an interesting aspect too. Because one of the things I talk to is like, especially a lot of my audience is a bit older guys who are thinking of retiring, and one of the first things I always ask them, like, well, do you like legitimately want to full-time retire and live in Vietnam? Or are you just thinking of like wintering or spending temporary time here? Because if you're spending temporary time in Vietnam, you can do 90-day e-visa, go somewhere for a weekend, right? Go to Bangkok, go to Phuket, go to Pattaya, go to wherever you want, Kuala Lumpur, and then come back and have another 90-day visa. And for like, right? Like for like literally $50, you can have an easy, like totally like transactional. You don't have to go to an embassy. You don't have to go to a consulate. Like you just apply online. You can be here 6 months of the year. Like it's that, and I think they overthink it too. Like they're like, how do I get a permanent residence? And it's like you haven't even set foot in Southeast Asia. Just calm down.
I agree with that. I think the important factor of that is you would need somewhere back home. You need, like for me, I have some family back home, but when I do go back home, I'm living in someone else's residence. I don't have a place in the UK. So that's an important driver for me, not wanting to be there for ages. Like, I love my family. I love everyone wants to help me out, but I don't want to live with them 24/7. It would drive me mad. Do you want to live there permanently? And if you do, then yeah, parting ways with your residence back home is one way to do it. But if you don't, then especially if you own a place and if you're from the UK, if you're on the property ladder, like Airbnb out your place, renting out your place. Like, accommodation is cheap enough in Southeast Asia to get by without needing to sell your assets back home in terms of property.
Let's use that as a segue into what do you spend rent on? What's your budget for living expenses in Thailand, and how does it vary compared to when you're in, say, Vietnam or other places in South?
In terms of value for money, Vietnam is the best place I've been. Full stop. Not in Southeast Asia, anywhere I've been. The value for money that you get in terms of accommodation in Vietnam is better. I would probably argue the same goes for food and most things in Vietnam. But in terms of accommodation, I would probably be wanting to spend between like $500 to $700 in Vietnam for like a nice place, bearing in mind I'm going there for a short period. If you're going for a longer period, you're going to get a much better deal than that. And then in Thailand, depending on where I am, I would hope to pay the same, but it's very unlikely I would be. Like, the place I'm in right now is about $800 a month. And I'm sure if I was going to be here 6 or 12 months, I could negotiate that down. But I'm only doing it month by month currently.
Is it like a 1-bedroom condo in Phuket, or what are the details?
1-bedroom condo, separate bedroom, separate living space. The living space isn't huge. The bedroom has a nice king-size bed, big wardrobes, nice, clean, spacious bathroom, separate kitchen area for $800 per month. It's worth noting down that if you were to come here during the high season, you're going to look to pay a fair bit more than that. Fair bit more.
I have a Google Sheet, CSL, like XSL, like spreadsheet that I make that's like a cost of living calculator. And it's basically so that you can like plug in your US dollar number. So we could take like Da Nang, Vietnam, and then like type in Phuket or whatever. And this is based on like crowdsourced information. And you can compare like any two places in the world, right? And it's like, I don't know if that's true. This says the cost of living is 72% higher in Phuket than in Da Nang. And it will compare like rent prices, etc. So I put together a spreadsheet that I call my like cost of living calculator, and it takes the data, like the number from that website, and you can put in your standard monthly expenses back home in the US, or like your UK expenses in US dollars, and then it like spits out a number for like the comparison from like Vietnam versus Thailand versus whatever. And it's updated pretty regularly. It still kind of blows me away that like Vietnam is like as you say, like it's literally as cheap as anywhere in the world.
About the pros and cons, I think that in terms of, I actually mentioned this in one of the videos I've done, is I think Da Nang is great for living. I think if I was going on a holiday, there would be better places I would choose to go, because in terms of things to do, there's more things to do elsewhere. And on a holiday, that's kind of what you want to do. You want to fill it with activities. You want to, or at least I would want to be doing things, plenty of options at least. And it's not like you'd be bored in Da Nang. It's that there's not as much to do if you're looking for just tons of activities in that sense. However, you are getting the cost. You are getting the people. You are getting a great location. You are getting the ocean right there. So there's pros and cons to everywhere, and I do think you have to, if you're considering making the move, have to think, what am I willing to give up? It's not necessarily about what you want to have. You need to be thinking about what you are willing to give up, because no country has it all, and Vietnam is no exception. Thailand is no exception. Australia, UK is no exception. Yeah. I, for one, at this period in my life, would rather have the things that Southeast Asia provides me over the things that the UK provides me for the majority of my year. However, I do eventually things from the UK when I'm away for long enough. Not many things, but just 2 things. Getting a little bit of a fix of that. Do you want to do that? Do you want to visit your home country? Do you want to spend some time there each year, or are you happy with parting ways with that and going the other way forever? Do you really hate your country, or do you hate your way of life? Because I hear about that a lot, and I see a ton of videos. You'll never really see me shit on the UK in the sense of, there's a lot of things I don't like, and I'll talk about them, but I'll never say the country's just a bad country, because it was where I was born. It's where I'm from. It's where most of my family are, and it's also a country that has a lot of good things, but it just has some bad things that every country has. And it's just about looking at that and seeing what you really want and just being honest with yourself of like, right, am I willing to give up a little bit of the more traditional sense of hygiene of what I'm used to? Am I willing to give up the little bit of order in the traffic because I want to just keep the traffic flowing, albeit you might have somebody coming from the left on a scooter, from the right on a scooter. You might have someone beeping, someone carrying a beam pole from a construction site across 6 lanes of traffic. You know, you can't have both. You can't have orderly traffic and never any accidents or incidents at the same time as you want freedom and less rules or a few less enforced rules.
You know, it makes me think of certain states in America, less so as much, but definitely in like the 70s and the 80s and the 90s. And like when I was a kid growing up, the sort of freest states, like, freedom and whatever, they're also the most dangerous, right? Like that's just part of it. Like no motorcycle helmets, less laws, less whatever. Like it's that whole idea of like, being on the frontier, the Wild West is dangerous. It's literally dangerous, but it's also that feeling of freedom, right? That I'm sure you felt that feeling driving on a motorbike somewhere in Thailand and Vietnam, wherever, and it's real. That's definitely part of it.
It makes me feel fucking alive, man. It makes me feel alive, and it's a big part of it. I don't like being micromanaged, like every movement and everything, and I think that's a huge appeal that I think probably deep down a lot of the guys that come to this part of the world, maybe we realize, maybe we don't. I don't think I could quite put my finger on what I loved about this part of the world for a long time, but without doubt, it's the not being micromanaged, not being like every last thing. I'm not getting a ticket for just going 32 and a 30, like 1 second that I accidentally done. It's just that sense of freedom that I feel here that I don't feel back in the UK.
Let's wrap up the monthly budget comparison, because I think that I do still think, for me, like you're saying, I'm proud to be a Canadian. I love a lot of things about Canada. I had many fantastic years in multiple different cities in Canada, but at the end of the day, the biggest motivation for me was cost of living. It was just a simple numerical comparison that, like, doing the same job in this part of the world, I could have a much better quality of life for me and now for my family. So what's your, like, overall, what you spend in a month in Thailand, and then what the sort of equivalent would cost you back home an hour outside of London?
Well, let's put some of the biggest expenses I have. Let's say then I would spend around 800 US dollars, maybe 600 to 800 on food. And then on my accommodation, I would spend around 800 on average US dollars on accommodation here in Southeast Asia. And then in terms of my scooter rental, I average between 100 and 120 pounds, which I believe is like somewhere in the region of 130 to 160 US dollars. And then a few little bits in between that. Maybe you're looking at, probably in Thailand, somewhere like 1,500 to 1,800 English pounds. Currently in Phuket, that cost would come down if I was in somewhere like Hua Hin, but that is the cost currently here. In Vietnam, that was coming down quite a bit. If I was to live this same way in the UK, it would probably cost me two to 3 times that same amount, and then I would need to be working a lot more to fund that. So to fund the same lifestyle, I would need to be working a lot more and then earn more to be able to spend more, but have less time.
You put the number on it. The number is 1,800 pounds, which is a little bit under $2,500 US. And then at home, you would probably spend 2 to 3 times that, 5,000 to maybe 7,500. We're at about 2,500 a month in Da Nang, and at home in Toronto, I think, it would be at least sort of in the 6,000 to 7,000 range, if not more, because some things are so far out of whack, right? Like, the equivalent of like the $40 scooter would be like probably going to be $1,000 to $1,500 a month to have a car, insurance, gas, like, so it really is hard to compare those things. But people do live still in Southeast Asia on $1,000 a month. you can. YouTube obviously loves to push out in the algorithm videos like that, the under $1,000. It's a whole niche in itself. But I think that, yeah, as a single traveler nomad, it's just like, it's exactly how we started this conversation. For $2,500, your quality of life here is phenomenal. If, as you're saying too, you're spending less hours a week online, or sorry, working, it's really hard to measure that kind of quality cost, right? And I had the same way. I like, how do I measure the fact that I spend hours more every single day with my kids? What is that worth, right? Like, literally.
Yeah. And it's a really, really good point. It's like, yeah, the quality of life is the big driver, because the cost is one thing, but the cost versus quality of life, I think that's the important factor. Because like you say about the under $1,000 a month, I've done it. Would I do it again? No. Like, would I want to do it again? No. But I've done it. Could I do it again? Yeah, I probably could. It wouldn't be awful, but it just wouldn't be great. It would cut out a lot of the things that I like doing, and that is a huge plus point for me. It's like, yeah, the cost of living, but it's what I get for the cost of living.
Let's dive in now into like sort of what we touched on just in conversation before, but more specifically, like the pros and the cons, that, you know, the things that pull you towards specific regions or maybe push you away from home or what you're fed up with about. So let's start with Thailand in particular, and Phuket and Chuang and the places you mentioned being drawn to. What are sort of the, aside from cost of living, 2 or 3 things that really keep you coming back to that area, to that spot?
Yeah, sure. Good question. One is the weather. And although at this time of the year it's hot, humid, there is still, like, it rained for about half an hour here in Phuket earlier today. And for the next couple of hours, the air was cooler, the humidity was down, and then we're still getting some sunshine each day, and well, most days. And then some days it's sunny for most of the day. Look, like, hot and humid isn't for everyone, and I do think that is both a pro and a con. Some days it is intense, and some days, as you'll know, like in Da Nang at the minute, I've heard it's like really hot and humid. Yeah, but it's like, can you tolerate that? And also, it's not like that all the time. It's like, yeah, there's that side. But coming from the UK, the weather's fucking terrible, man. It's like, it's not good. It's just not good at all.
My God. I called my parents the other day and they said they were with their friends. They were having dinner on their, like, the patio, like terrace in front of their house in Toronto. On May 31st, it was 10 degrees and they were all wearing their jackets.
It's not about that. It's not about that. So yeah, that's a huge part of it for me, because if you're from the UK, or if you've never been, or if you know a little bit about it, you know, majority of the time it's grey. It's never like so cold like you would get in some parts of the northern hemisphere, like Scandinavian countries, or certain parts of Russia, or certain parts of the US and Canada. It still gets cold, but the flip side is it doesn't really get that hot either. So you have this middle ground where it usually rains, it's usually overcast, and it's usually not warm enough to go out in just shorts and t-shirt. In the winter, it doesn't snow that much. It's just like an averagely bad place to have weather. It's just like the weather just generally is. When it is good, it's great. When when the sun's shining, it's a nice clear day, whether it be cold or hot in the summer, or cold and clear day in the winter. It's beautiful. It is. Our countryside is some of the best in the world, but the weather is a huge negative for me, and the weather in Southeast Asia is a huge plus. Outside of the cost of living, as we mentioned, just that sense of freedom that you have here. Like, I do always try and ride my scooter with a helmet. I'm not perfect. Sometimes I'll hop on and I'll be sweaty and I can't be bothered, whatever. But I do always try to. But that sense of, if you don't want to, like, yeah, you might get a fine, but you're getting a fine because it's illegal and against the law, but they're also not gonna, you can still go about your day, you can still just crack on, and it's kind of like that. You just have a sense of freedom, and if you're only going to the shop, you're probably going to be fine. And you know what, yeah, you may not be allowed to, but no one's going to judge you if you do or don't as well. Like, you're kind of able to live and let live within, you know, some constraints in terms of just being respectful. And then other elements of meeting people that you probably wouldn't meet if you were just in a small circle back home, or if you are still in the same friendship groups or the same area you grew up. You tend to have met the people that you will have met, and people tend to be doing things with their lives or very comfortable and settled. And if you are someone that has different goals or different vision or different idea of life, sometimes you may not think the same, you might not have the same conversation, so you feel a little bit less fulfilled. And that is a huge part of it for me as well. And then another pro is like, I love training in the heat. I've had surgery in my left shoulder. I've torn my meniscus in my right knee. I've torn my labrum in my right shoulder. And, you know, in the winter months and when it's cold, even in the like months when it's just like 15 degrees, my body doesn't feel that good. And being here in the warmer climate, I feel a lot looser. I can train and I can be active. And yeah, it might be hot, but my joints don't feel like they belong to a 95-year-old geriatric patient.
Okay, I need to have a follow-up question on that one, because I was one of the real like draws for me about Southeast Asia, in particular in Vietnam when I first came, is that when I was a bit younger, I was really serious about rock climbing. I was just like, it was one of my full-on passions. I loved it. You know, every waking minute I'd be either at the gym or planning my next trip. And then I shredded my meniscus. Like I tore it twice really badly. The second time I had to have like basically just have my whole knee scraped out. But I had it done in Saigon and I had a pretty good experience. So what are your experiences of healthcare back home versus have you had injuries in Thailand? Like I know you do Muay Thai pretty seriously, right?
I'm a hobbyist. I'm not serious about it compared to any of these guys. But I'm serious in terms of my interest. I'm not serious in terms of my abilities. Yeah.
I didn't say I was a pro rock climber. I just said I was passionate.
Yeah, I want to make that clear before anyone lines me up with some elite fucking fighter that just
ever had an injury in Thailand or somewhere else and like been like had to go to the hospital, gone through the system?
Yeah, actually, I'm still nursing a bit of a toe injury. I kicked someone a little bit wrong last year, and I thought I broke my toe, and it was causing me some problems. And I went and got X-ray and had a really, really good experience in a Thai hospital. Actually, I went in, and in fact, let me take you back to the start. I emailed someone, they got back to me. They said, sure, come in tomorrow. Came in, and from the time I came in to my appointment, I walked in, checked in, got chauffeured. I get from a nurse or with a nurse and showed me around, showed me where to go, introduced me to the doctor. I explained things. They sent me for an X-ray. I came back, got consulted with the doctor. He explained that luckily I hadn't broken my toe despite it hurting very bad. And then got discharged, paid the fee. I think it was around either £50 or $50 either way, between 50 and 60 US dollars, somewhere in that region. I was in and out, I believe, in 32 minutes. So yeah, it was a really good experience, really good.
What would the experience be like back home? If you had similar injuries or when you've had similar injuries back home, what's the experience like?
Look, like we don't get the NHS for free, because if we pay taxes, if we pay national insurance, like it contributes towards it. So it's not free, but it's as near to free as you can get. So it would be hard to complain about the NHS, because when you need them, they generally are very good in terms of an emergency situation. In terms of like something life or death there and then, they are very good. In terms of needing something below emergency, it's not the best service. It's not the best procedure and protocol. It's quite difficult and time consuming to get an appointment, to see the right people, and to actually get the help you needed. If I was to, for example, hurt my big toe, or thought I broke a bone, if I was to go into the emergency room, or we call it A&E, accident and emergency, then potentially you would be waiting 4 to 6 hours, maybe 8 hours on a busy day, just to see someone, and then you would have to go through the X-ray procedure and everything else. So you're talking about a lengthy time, albeit you would come out and you would have no bill to pay. So there is a pro and con there. Personally, for me, in terms of the experience, I would rather pay that bit of money. However, if that fee was £5,000, maybe I would be saying something different. Maybe I'd be happy to wait that duration. I've also had to see doctors for other things, like a prescription at different stages, or want some medication for one thing or another. And it's been a really good experience. Again, you do pay, but the fee is very reasonable, affordable, and the biggest thing for me is the time it takes is street.
The care is like tiered here or whatever, right? So there's like public hospitals, private clinics, private hospitals, etc. But it's all about depending on if you have international travel insurance or if you don't, you're paying out of pocket. Do you do travel insurance? Like, do you have SafetyWing or anything like that, or you just
Yeah,
go for it?
yeah. I use SafetyWing. I have travel insurance. I'd never be without it. And I think, particularly if you're in the older demographic, like it's a no-brainer. I know it might be a little bit more costly with each year that goes by, but it's you can't be without it. It's one of them things. It's a bit like, I know it's a bit like a raincoat. You want to have it and not need it, rather than need it and not have it.
Let's talk about how do you make money online? How do you make money while you're living abroad?
Yeah, so I think we're in the age of too many options, because you'll hear somebody say, I do e-commerce, I do drop shipping, I do this, I do that, I'm a closer for a sales company. There's a lot of options, and I think it can be a little bit overwhelming, and I still find it quite overwhelming to hear of all these different things, and I think it's about choosing what you're probably good at, what you can get paid for, and what is available to you, and just sticking with one or two things, or two or three things. So for me personally, I got my personal trainer qualification 10 years ago. Since then, I've done infinite amount of further education on so many different things in the fitness space, and more recently, over the past like 5-6 years, that's been in biomechanics and like injury rehab. So I just bridged the gap and paired up my fitness coaching with like movement and biomechanics, and that is my main source of income. I help people look good whilst helping their body move well as well. I work with people one-to-one with coaching clients, and soon I think I'm going to launch more of like a general program, because my audience is now bigger. I've got like 16,000 subs on YouTube, I believe now. So now my audience is bigger. I'd like to open that to more people that don't need to pay a premium to work with me one-to-one. So there's that option. And like, let's say, for instance, a lot of travel channels might, or if you were considering creating content, then you could sell some kind of travel guide or stuff like that. Again, that's going off on a slight tangent rather than explaining what I do for my income. And then I do some video editing, but that's ad hoc. If somebody wants me to do some form of video editing for them, maybe they've seen some of my videos or seen some of my short form videos, and want some help with that, then I would do it for them. And then I obviously do YouTube now as well. So they're the YouTube, and my coaching is the main thing, with my fitness coaching being number one and YouTube being number two.
It's a misconception that most people earn the majority of their money online as like by vlogging or by like AdSense or something like that. So how did you get your in-person personal training business to an online business? Like where was the shift where you went from working one-to-one with people to one-to-one online?
Yeah, so the shift was 2018, when I had first came to Asia, and I was like, I need to get back out here. I need to get back out here. I'm personal training back home, which is fine, but this is a whole other world. I love it out here. It just feels like me. So I went back. I started looking into it. I got my first client, and I was charging them a criminally low price, where if I continued doing that, I would probably be working 23 hours of the day and still not like breaking even. But it was my first sign that I could make money online. It was my first inkling of a future that I actually wanted to have. That was positive. So I continued doing that. I continued refining the process until I got to a place where I could charge a little bit more, where my service was slightly better. And then I figured out how I could reach more people online and help more people online than I could in person, and deliver a better service online than I could in person. And then I just went for it. And all I do is, let's say somebody has some form of injury or some form of goal, we run through an assessment. I work closely with my clients one-to-one. I give them tons of support, and we'll speak to them on a very, very, very regular basis. And then based on everything they've told me, and based on my years of experience, I will build them a plan that is going to get them either out of pain or back in shape, or a bit of both. And then I deliver that through a coaching platform online that is like I've been using for years, and the system is pretty straightforward now and simple. As long as I've got all the relevant info from them, I can do that. And you could argue that aside from anything that is physical or requires manual therapy, like, I don't know, massage, haircut, a mechanic, you could probably do most things online that you can do in person. Is it better online? Certain elements, it's more convenient for both the user and the provider, myself, but is it better in terms of the actual experience and ease of it and the connection of it? No, in person, I think, will always be better. But can you match it at least? Yes, you can. But there's certain little things, let's say, for instance, this connection cut out right now, which 99 times out of 100 it wouldn't. But there's that point, the connection isn't going to cut out in real life. You can't just like disappear. It's like the Wi-Fi's gone. So there's little bits that can't ever be replaced. Or for instance, for me, if I'm coaching someone, I can actually touch them and move their shoulder in the right place, or help them get their knee in the right place, or something like that. That is more difficult online, but with experience in any profession like my own, you eventually develop the skills and communication to be able to get people to.
Did you start YouTube as a way to reach clients and like to grow your business, or did you start YouTube as like a passion hobby part of your traveling?
So when I hit upload for the first time was just, I've been thinking about it for a long time, and then maybe 3 years ago I hit upload, and there's about 4 or 5 videos that no one's ever seen. And looking back now, it's funny, but it was just the start of something. You need to be shit before you can be good. I still don't consider myself good or natural or like an expert with anything, but I just consider myself like as improving. But the first time I hit upload, it was like anything. It's super scary. It's super strange. I didn't do to support my current business, as is totally unrelated, totally separate, more related, a bit about digital nomad, a little bit about exercise and fitness, but more related to lifestyle rather. Would I make more money, and would it have more impact in the sense of from a business and financial standpoint if I related it to my coaching? 100%. Would I still feel as passionate about it? Definitely not.
You have a big audience, man. Whatever, 16, 17,000 subs. I mean, by the time people watch this, you could easily have 20 or 25,000 subs. You have videos that are close to 1 million views.
It's a bit surreal sometimes to see it as well. And like, I don't count myself as a YouTuber or anything like that. I just like, I still just enjoy the whole process. Probably the least part I enjoy is, believe it or not, I don't love being in front of the camera and speaking to the camera all the time. I sometimes find that quite awkward. Once I get going, sometimes it's fine. And when I say the right things, I'm like, yes, go on, you said it. When I say the wrong things, I'm like, man, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, shut up. Like we all have moments like that, but the whole editing, the whole planning, the whole process of it, and then when you click upload after something you're quite proud of and you're happy with, that's the part I love, and that's when you come back for more. And that's what I really enjoy, that being able to piece it all together, because I'm a YouTube enthusiast. I've always watched YouTube. I love watching all things YouTube. I love watching all things Southeast Asia and travel. Now I can create videos that can help people in the way that other videos help me, and that I enjoy making in places that I've really enjoyed being in. I just get a buzz off it.
Yeah, if I hit upload and I feel good about a thing, if like whatever, an hour later, it's like a 10 out of 10, my worst video, I might feel bummed for like a minute. But I also know from my own experience making videos on YouTube and from watching other channels that YouTube is actually evergreen.
No, I don't think there is. And the evergreen aspect of YouTube, I think, is huge. Like, I've been posting on Instagram for 10 years now. I'm pretty consistently, until recently, I've been posting, sometimes 5 days a week throughout the year. And the content, you can put a lot of effort in sometimes, and it just goes into the abyss within about 5 days. It is always there for reference. It's there. It can blow up later down the line, but it feels more accessible too, because you have the search bar. Somebody can always search for something, and if that pops up, it doesn't matter if it's a month old, 6 months old, or 6 years old. It will still be there for people to click on, and as long as it's still relevant, it will still be useful.
Because we're talking more about creating and making stuff and putting stuff out there online, we'll get back to the Southeast Asia aspect of it. But what's a piece of advice or something you'd say, to the person, to the friend, to whoever who is still sort of thinking about whatever, making videos or uploading onto YouTube, but has, one of the million mental blocks?
I don't want to be cliche and say just go for it, because that's not useful. But I would say just like do it for the right reasons. Do you want to do it, or have you romanticized it in your brain and think it's the right thing to do, and that's the best thing to do? Because it's not for everyone. It can take away from moments sometimes. Like if you go somewhere and you're thinking, right, I need to shoot content, but you want to enjoy the place. I try and pick one now. I didn't used to. I try to do both. I will try and pick one and be like, right, I'm either going to enjoy it or shoot content, or I will know exactly what I want to shoot and I will shoot that, and then I'll put my stuff away, because otherwise you just find yourself neither here or there, and it's hard being present and doing it from a purely business sense. Be honest about it, but don't expect to love it, because if you are doing it from a promotional standpoint for your business of some sort, then that's cool, but you should do it with that in mind. You should treat it as such. But I do think if you're doing it from a longevity standpoint and you're not an expert on it, then I think the passion needs to be there, because you're going to be shit at it for a little while. You're going to suck at it. You're going to make some videos that either don't do well. You will get trolls. Like I've had a family member literally ask me a couple of days ago saying, just read through your comments, or like few of the trolls, so to speak, and how do you deal with it? Like, jokes aside, have you came up with a coping mechanism? And I remember the first video I got a bunch of trolls on, and it it really, really was stressing me out, really stressing me out. I can't lie, I can't sit here and say it wasn't. I think that would be disingenuous with me. It was stressing me out bad. But then the video continued to do better, and I realized that there was a lot of positive, and it wasn't the fact that there was so many negative comments. It was the fact that our brains are hardwired over millions of, well, a long time rather than millions of years, a long time, to focus on the negative, focus on the threat. And if there's 9 positive comments and 1 negative one, you'll gravitate towards that. So if you're serious about it, you need to be serious about understanding that not everyone will like everything. You'll get some hate, you'll get some people talk shit, but at the end of the day, if you were to go back to school and there was 30 people in the class, there was probably a few people in the class you didn't like, and there was probably a few people that didn't like you, you know? So it is what it is, and it, just because it's out there for the internet, don't worry about it. Like, it's just one of them things, man. They're going to be everywhere, and now when I get them, I find them funny. I still have to fight myself to not comment sarcastically all the time and respond, but it is what it is. Like, that person is either usually jealous, they're misunderstanding something, or in fact, this was what I responded the other day in simple terms. I said to my member of the family that asked me, I said to them, well, it's one of two things. Either there's some truth to it, in which case I can learn from it, and I'm absolutely fine with that. If somebody says something negatively and there's some truth to it, I will look at it and I will actually go away and try and improve on it. Or if there's no truth to it, then who gives a fuck?
I feel the same way on YouTube. It's like, I can't spend my time responding to that negative comment, because it takes away from time I could be spending on the positive comments, right? On the people who are asking real questions and really want real value and want a real interaction. And it's hard, right? Like you're saying, the lizard brain, the gut reaction, you want to like, fight.
And unless you end an internet argument with an anonymous person on YouTube, then it's just not worth it. And the other bit of advice I'd maybe give to people is just try and be as authentic as you can, but at the same time, don't feel like, sometimes I've thought to myself that maybe I'm not being 100% me in some senses, but I am, and I always am, and I get great feedback on that, saying like it's just like having a chat with you. But I think the slight feeling of that sometimes that can be like, was I being myself or not? And is, you're only ever going to give, probably, if you're a normal human being, like 95% or 90% of yourself out to the internet.
All right, so let's shift back though into the Thailand thing. So what's your sort of dream day? You know, if it's in Phuket or Chawang or wherever it is, give me and the audience a walkthrough of like the dream day in the life of Josh on the move.
Yes. So, I mean, I'd love to say I have the biggest routine in the world. I don't. I try and get up and do something productive in the mornings. I think getting out sooner than later always makes me feel good, no matter what that is, whether it's a walk, going down to the cafe, going and training, whatever. But a dream day, like a real dream day. Let's get on. Let's get up. The sun's shining. We go out for a little bit of a walk, go get some food, go train, come back, do a dream day. I'm not working, maybe and chill out for a bit. Maybe watch a bit of YouTube. Then go out and some sports are on, and I watch some sports. I have a couple beers. I chill out, watch the sunset. Job's good. Like, have some good food. Come back home. I'm a simple man. Like, yeah, don't need too much else for that for me. And a lot of people separate that. They think like you got to be the health guy. You can't ever drink, or you got to be the party guy. I don't party too much, but I do like a beer. So in my dream day, I'd be training in the morning and I'd be drinking in the evening. I'm into football. I'm into MMA, so UFC. I like watching Muay Thai out in Thailand. I'd watch anything. I'd play any sports as well. Like I like pickleball when I'm in Vietnam. That
Man,
got super into pickleball, man. I loved it.
there's so many courts in Danang. It's like, that's one of the things I feel guilty about not doing, because I know I want to be doing it. So I like to pass on questions from old guests for new guests. So one of the guys I interviewed, Eddie, he had this great question for me where he said, what's the one thing you're not doing right now that you know, like in your gut, in your subconscious, you know you should be doing it, but you're not doing?
Shit, man, that's a pretty good question. I mean, maybe in reality, there's a lot for most people if they've really dug. Should it, right, a little bit of nuance. Should could be like all of the things that you know you should be doing in terms of, right, if I was to live this like monk type lifestyle that was super healthy, super righteous and everything, I should be talking to my friends a little bit more and keeping contact with a few friends from back home a bit more than I do. Sometimes take that for granted. And you know, with long-term friends that you can kind of have that time away and things don't change. But at the same time, I think I should put more time aside to both friends and family. I should speak to them more on the phone.
That one, that resonates with me, man. That hits home for sure. So what do you do for, I mean, it hits everyone eventually. What do you do for loneliness, for socializing, for making friends or dating when you're traveling?
So I have a missus, and she travels with me most or some of the time. She's not with me right now, but there's that. Also, as much as sometimes I don't like talking with people, some days I'll just be like, today's a day where, like, if no one says hello to me, I'm cool with that. I'm sound with it. Other days I'm quite social, and you know, I could spark up a conversation with someone in the lift, at the coffee shop, whatever. And even though I do have plenty of free time, I can work as much as I want to, then I could always keep myself busy. And I think that for me doesn't, uh, I don't think I get the loneliest. I have been lonely. I can get it sometimes. I can miss home. I can miss like my close people. I can miss my partner, but uh, I've spent a lot of time on my own since I was like relatively young. Yeah, I think the weekends, ironically, are a time when I sometimes can feel a little bit lonely or a little bit bored. And I think that's because I don't want to be drinking from 9 a.m. in the day. And if I've done all my work throughout the week or trained, and I don't want to do any more work, if you haven't got activities planned or if your friends are busy, that's sometimes where I can feel like that. But being totally transparent, I can feel like that in the UK as well. So that's not exclusive.
Yeah, it's not regional. That's a good point.
And I think that maybe, you know, I try not to think like, right, I'm bored or I'm lonely, go just get on the beers and chat with like people. But I think maybe that's a reason that a lot of people drink, and sometimes that's as fun and as good as a solution as anything else, just to go and have a couple beers, chat with someone whilst watching some sport or doing whatever. So I don't want to encourage anyone to say, if you're lonely, go have a beer, because I don't think that's the answer. But if occasionally you're lonely and you want to go have a beer, it probably isn't the worst thing in the world.
So I do think that people back home and in the West are sometimes way too hard on themselves, or like culturally too hard on themselves, about that idea of like, than having a couple beers at the end of the world. I know that there's people struggle with real addictions, and I have friends who struggle with real addictions, but I also think that it's like, it is not a crime to go have a couple beers on a Sunday afternoon. Like,
It's that balance, right? It's that balance.
it is. It's finding balance and equilibrium. And for me, a big part of finding balance has been moving abroad, has been living in different cultures and not keeping me out of my comfort zone and on my toes and constantly learning. So before we wrap it up, what's one last piece of advice or question or something that I didn't ask you?
What does an average day look like? I know we touched on like dream day and a bit of that, but maybe an average day.
So what's the difference for an average day? What's your work day look like? Your general like digital nomad work abroad life. You wake up and you have a hit list on your
So I start the day by like ringing the bell, and my maid brings me a pina colada on the rocks. And then I follow it up with a foot massage at 9:30. No, right. So that's what I think. That's what a lot of people think. Maybe if they're, yeah, who knows? Maybe some people do live like that. But my average day as a digital nomad, Southeast Asia, I would get up and try and do something productive in some sense, like early on. But that doesn't always happen. Like, don't beat yourself up if you don't. Like, some days I wake up and because I don't have to work till work done on my laptop in the afternoon, and then I'll stop for dinner. If I've got anything to do in the evening, I'll then work a little bit more. But I'll try and, I'm a bit more of a sprinter rather than a jogger. So like some days I may work a massive day, and then another day I may rein it in and only do like a couple of hours work. And also it's worth noting that because we are in a tropical climate, if it pisses it down outside, then plans go out the window and I might just do a work day.
So you're running a full online business and a YouTube on top of it, which I think of YouTube as, even as a hobby, can feel like a full-time business. How many hours a week do you spend working? What's your average work week?
I mean, if a YouTube video is in there, which invariably it is, maybe like, I don't know, maybe 40 hours or 35 hours. It's not ridiculous. I don't want to say it is. Like, I could get a lot more done and make a lot more money if I worked super hard all the time. But I try and work hard, but I try and rein it in as to working all of the time. But if I've got a big project with YouTube and it's like a big edit, I can easily spend probably 12 hours or maybe even longer on the recording and the editing. And then my work, I've got it pretty organized now. And if I have an extremely, like, if I have a big client load at the time, then maybe it can take me a little bit longer. But generally, I would say probably 35 to 40 hours a week I work, or give or take. Maybe 30 hours on average, given that some weeks I might have a really easy workload and the video editing and stuff might not take as long. I would also add to the nuance of that, I have been working this same job for some time and I have been working in this same field for some time. What takes me now maybe 10 hours might have previously took me 30 hours just a couple of years. So eventually you get more efficient, better systems.
I just want to thank you so much for taking your time out, man, for taking an hour and a half out of your day, talking to me, coming on the Cost of Living Abroad pod. For everyone watching, listening out there, it's Josh on the Move. All of his socials, YouTube, Instagram will be linked below, and then I'll put up his channel and video over my shoulder. Thanks so much for watching this week's episode of the Cost of Living Abroad pod, brought to you by SafetyWing Nomad Insurance. You can find more episodes of the pod over my shoulder, or check out thecostoflivingabroad.com right here. Use the link below pinned in the comments or at the top of the description, or just click and capture this QR code over my shoulder.